I walked out of work to an empty parking spot. My 2023 Camry, just paid off, was gone. I called my parents panicking. "Oh, we gave it to your sister. She needs it more." My sister had totaled 3 cars in 5 years. This was my first new car ever. I stood there, frozen in disbelief, as the weight of their betrayal crushed me. They had taken the one thing I had worked so hard to earn. Without hesitation, I hung up and dialed 911. This wasn't a family disagreement. This was theft, plain and simple. The day had started, like any other Tuesday, at Portland Memorial Hospital. I'd clocked in at 6 in the morning for my shift as a lab technician, processing blood samples and running tests with the quiet efficiency I'd developed over 7 years. My coworkers knew me as Reliable Carson, the guy who picked up extra weekend shifts and never complained about staying late when we were short-staffed. What they didn't know was why I worked those extra shifts. For 3 years, I'd poured every spare cent into paying off my Toyota Camry. Not just any car, but my first ever brand new vehicle. I'd signed the final payment check just 2 weeks ago. A moment of pure accomplishment that still made me smile when I thought about it. "You staying late again tonight, Carson?" Jackson, my supervisor, asked as he passed my station. "Not tonight," I replied, allowing myself a rare early departure. "Got plans with Melanie." My girlfriend of 8 months understood my dedication to becoming debt-free, but I'd promised her a proper date now that the car was paid off. As I finished processing my last batch of samples, I thought about the day I'd driven that gleaming silver Camry off the lot. The new car smell, the way the salesman had congratulated me, the photos I'd taken to commemorate the occasion. It represented more than transportation. It was proof that I could accomplish something substantial on my own. Growing up as the older brother to Amanda had taught me self-reliance the hard way. From childhood, the pattern was clear. Amanda got the attention, the praise, the resources. When college time came, my parents Walter and Diane had a sudden financial emergency that drained the modest fund they'd set aside for my education. Mysteriously, when Amanda graduated high school 2 years later, they managed to cover her full ride to a private university. I'd worked through community college, transferred to a state school, and graduated with a practical degree in medical laboratory science. No help, no handouts. When Amanda dropped out after 3 semesters, my parents consoled her with a shopping spree. When I landed my hospital job, my achievement was acknowledged with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," during a phone call mostly about Amanda's latest boyfriend drama. The Camry was different. It was mine alone. I'd researched models for months, compared financing options, negotiated the price myself, and made every single payment on time. My parents had seen it exactly twice, during brief visits. Amanda had rolled her eyes and called it boring, which I took as a compliment to my practical choice. My apartment reflected the same mindset. Modest but comfortable, in a decent neighborhood with reasonable rent that allowed me to prioritize becoming debt-free. No fancy furniture, no expensive electronics, just the basics, plus a few small luxuries I'd allowed myself. The biggest splurge was the weekend hiking gear stored neatly in my closet, my escape to Oregon's trails whenever I had a full day off. As I clocked out and headed for the parking garage, I was mentally planning the evening with Melanie. We'd met at a friend's barbecue, and she'd impressed me with her directness and humor. As an elementary school counselor, she understood demanding work schedules and limited budgets. We were talking about moving in together soon. Another milestone that felt within reach, now that the car was paid off. My phone rang as I reached the 3rd floor of the parking garage. Melanie's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, just finishing up." "I'll pick you up in 20, I answered. Her voice sounded strange. "Carson, there's something you should know. I was talking to Amanda yesterday." I slowed my pace. Melanie had met my sister only twice, and they weren't exactly friends. "What about?" "She mentioned asking your parents for a car. She said hers was having problems, and she was hoping they'd help her out. They probably will, I said, unsurprised. They always do. Carson. She specifically asked about your car. Said something about how you probably didn't need such a nice one for just commuting. I laughed. That's ridiculous. It's my car, fully paid for. My name's on the title. They can't just give it away. I know. I just thought you should know what she was saying. Thanks for the heads up. But don't worry. Even my parents wouldn't go that far. We said goodbye, and I turned the corner to my assigned parking spot, already reaching for my keys. The spot was empty. I stopped, confused. Had I parked somewhere else this morning? No, this was my spot. I circled the area, thinking maybe I'd made a mistake in my early morning haze. Nothing. My silver Camry was gone. My heart pounded as I pulled out my phone again and dialed security. They arrived quickly, checked their logs, and confirmed no car had been towed from the garage today. The security footage showed my car still in its spot at noon, but the camera angle didn't capture who had driven it away. You should call the police to report it stolen, the security guard advised. My hands shook as I dialed my parents first. If my car had been stolen, I'd need a ride home, and despite everything, they were still my first thought in an emergency. My father answered on the third ring. Hello? Dad. My car's been stolen from the hospital parking garage. I need help. There was a pause, then his maddeningly calm voice replied. Oh? Your car? We gave it to Amanda. She needs it more than you do right now. Her interview tomorrow is all the way in Seattle. Time seemed to stop. You what? Amanda needed reliable transportation for her job interview. That old junker of hers wouldn't make the trip. We knew you could just take the bus for a while. You took my car? Without asking me? That's stealing. Don't be dramatic, Carson. It's just a car, and she's your sister. Family helps family. In the background, I heard my mother's voice. Tell him we left his gym bag on the porch. My father continued. Your gym stuff is at our house. Amanda was in a hurry to get on the road. Let me talk to Amanda right now, I demanded. She's already left for Seattle. She'll call you tomorrow, after the interview. The reality crashed down on me. My sister, who had totaled 3 cars since getting her license at 16, was driving my brand new Camry to Seattle. My sister, who had rear-ended a delivery truck while texting, sideswiped a parked car while applying makeup, and driven into a ditch while reaching for a dropped phone, now had my car, the car I had sacrificed vacations, new clothes, and countless small luxuries to pay off. Dad, this is theft. You can't just take someone else's car. It's not theft. It's family. Don't be selfish. The word selfish was the final straw. The same accusation they'd thrown at me whenever I'd refused to give Amanda money, or when I'd chosen to work instead of driving 3 hours to help her move, or when I'd suggested she might get a part-time job during college. Put the spare key back in my apartment, I said coldly. I'm calling the police. I hung up before he could respond and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice contrasted sharply with the chaos in my mind. I need to report a stolen vehicle, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. My car was taken from Portland Memorial Hospital's employee parking garage. I provided the details. 2023. Toyota Camry. Silver. License plate number. VIN. Then came the hardest part. Do you have any idea who might have taken it? I swallowed hard. Yes. My parents took it and gave it to my sister without my permission. There was a brief silence. Sir, is this a family dispute? Over shared property? No. The car is solely in my name. I have all the documentation. I just finished paying it off 2 weeks ago. They took my spare key without permission and stole my car. 20 minutes later, Officer Bradley arrived at the parking garage. He was younger than I expected, maybe in his early 30s. with a methodical approach that helped calm my frayed nerves. "I'll need to see any documentation you have for the vehicle," he said. Thankfully, I kept digital copies of everything on my phone. I showed him the title in my name, insurance policy, loan payoff letter, and registration. "And you're certain your parents didn't have permission to take the vehicle?" "Absolutely certain. I gave them a spare key for emergencies only. I never imagined they'd use it to take my car and give it to my sister." Officer Bradley made some notes. "We'll need to speak with your parents. Do you have their address?" I provided their information in Vancouver, Washington, just across the state line. Officer Bradley called it in, then turned back to me. "In situations like this, it's best if we can resolve it without formal charges. Would you be willing to come with me to your parents' house to retrieve your vehicle?" I nodded, though the thought of the confrontation made my stomach churn. My sister's supposedly driving it to Seattle right now for a job interview tomorrow. "We'll start at your parents' place and go from there." Another officer, Tyler Grant, arrived to drive me to Vancouver, while Officer Bradley followed in his cruiser. The 30-minute drive gave me time to think, to second-guess myself. Was I overreacting? The thought vanished when I remembered the truth. This wasn't about a car. It was about respect. About boundaries that had been trampled my entire life. When we arrived at my parents' modest 2-story house, my mother was standing in the doorway, arms crossed. My father appeared behind her as we parked. "Carson, what is this nonsense?" My father's voice boomed across the front yard. "You called the police on your own family?" Officer Grant held up his hand. "Sir, we're here to discuss the unauthorized taking of Mr. Walker's vehicle." "There was nothing unauthorized about it," my father argued. "We're his parents. The vehicle is registered solely to Carson Walker," Officer Bradley said, joining us. "Unless he gave permission for someone else to take it, which he states he did not, then it was taken illegally." My mother's expression shifted from indignation to concern. "This is ridiculous. Carson, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." Before I could respond, a silver Camry pulled into the driveway. My car. With Amanda behind the wheel, she stepped out, confusion crossing her face at the sight of police cars. "What's going on?" "You were supposed to be on your way to Seattle," my father said. Amanda shrugged. "I decided to stay at Tiffany's place tonight and drive up in the morning." "What's with the police?" Officer Grant approached her. "Ma'am, did you have permission from Carson Walker to drive his vehicle?" Amanda looked at me, then back at the officer. "I don't need his permission. Our parents said I could use it." "That's not how vehicle ownership works," Officer Bradley explained. "If you don't have permission from the owner, driving the vehicle constitutes unauthorized use at minimum." The color drained from Amanda's face. "But," Mom and Dad said. "We thought it would be fine," my mother interjected. "Carson has always shared with his sister." The absurdity of that statement nearly made me laugh. When have I ever shared anything willingly? "You've always taken from me and given to her." Officer Grant asked Amanda for her license and registration. She handed over her license and then looked confused. "The registration is probably in the glove compartment, but it's Carson's car." "Let's all talk inside," Officer Bradley suggested, eyeing the neighbors who had begun to gather on their porches. Inside my parents' living room, the tension was suffocating. Photos of Amanda dominated the walls, and mantle her graduation, vacations, candid moments. The few pictures of me were older, mostly from high school. Officer Bradley took the lead. "Here's the situation. The vehicle belongs legally to Carson. Taking it without his permission is a criminal offense, regardless of family relationships. We had his spare key," my mother argued. "If he didn't want us to use it, he shouldn't have given it to us. A key given for emergencies doesn't constitute permission for general use," Officer Bradley explained patiently. "It's similar to giving someone your house key to water plants while you're away. They can't move in, or let others live there. This is different, my father insisted. Amanda needed the car. Her interview could change her whole life. So could my car being stolen, I countered. I have payments, insurance, responsibilities. What if something happened to the car while she had it? What if she got into another accident? Amanda's eyes flashed. Another accident? What's that supposed to mean? You've totaled 3 cars in 5 years, Amanda. 3. My mother stepped in. Those were unfortunate circumstances. Texting while driving isn't an unfortunate circumstance. It's negligence. Officer Grant had been looking through some papers on the dining table. He held up a document. What's this? My blood ran cold as I recognized what appeared to be a title transfer form with a signature that vaguely resembled mine. Where did you get that? I demanded. My father shifted uncomfortably. We were going to talk to you about it. Amanda needs a reliable car for this new job opportunity. Officer Grant examined the paper. This appears to be an attempt to transfer vehicle ownership. The signature doesn't match the one on your license, Mr. Walker. Because I didn't sign it, I said, stunned by the discovery. They forged my signature. The room fell silent. Even Amanda looked shocked. That's a serious allegation, Officer Bradley said. If true, that would constitute forgery and potentially fraud. My mother began to cry. We were just trying to help Amanda. Carson has a good job, a stable life. Amanda is still finding her way. By stealing from me? By forging documents? Officer Grant spoke up. Given the circumstances and the evidence of potential forgery, we need to impound the vehicle as evidence. You can't take my car. Amanda protested. It's not your car, I said quietly. It never was. As the officers explained the next steps, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sorrow. This wasn't how family was supposed to act. This wasn't love or support, it was theft, manipulation, and betrayal. When the officers asked if I wanted to press charges, I looked at my family, my father's angry defiance, my mother's tearful manipulation, Amanda's entitled outrage. Years of similar moments flashed through my mind. College funds redirected, achievements minimized, sacrifices unacknowledged. Yes, I said firmly. I want to press charges. The look of shock on their faces told me they never expected me to stand up for myself. They never thought I would draw a line. But some lines, once crossed, change relationships forever. As I left with Officer Grant to complete paperwork at the station, my mother called after me. Carson, please, we're family. For the first time, I questioned what that word really meant. 3 days after the confrontation at my parents' house, my phone exploded with messages. My car remained impounded as evidence, while the district attorney decided whether to pursue forgery charges, in addition to the unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. I had given my statement, provided handwriting samples to prove the signature wasn't mine, and was trying to focus on work while the legal process unfolded. Carson, it's your mother again. Please call us back. This has gone too far. Hey bro, it's Amanda. We need to talk about this car situation. Call me. Carson, it's Uncle Steve. Your mother is beside herself. What's gotten into you? I silenced my phone and focused on the laboratory samples in front of me. Jackson had been surprisingly understanding when I'd explained the situation. Family stuff can be complicated, he'd said. Take whatever time you need for the legal proceedings. Just give me advance notice for court dates. His support meant more than he knew. For years, I'd kept my family dynamics private, sharing only vague details with friends and coworkers. Now, the secret was out, and I felt both exposed and strangely liberated. The lab door opened, and my coworker Aaron peeked in. Someone's here to see you. Says, she's your girlfriend? Melanie stood in the hospital lobby, holding a coffee cup. Thought you might need this, she said, handing me the large black coffee. How are you holding up? Better than expected, I admitted. though my extended family apparently thinks I've lost my mind. Standing up for yourself isn't losing your mind, she said firmly. It's finding your voice. We sat in the corner of the cafeteria while I took a much-needed break. Melanie had been my rock through this ordeal, offering support without judgment. My parents want to have a family dinner tonight, I said, scrolling through my messages, to talk things through as a family. Melanie's expression turned wary. That sounds like an ambush. Exactly what I thought. Every aunt, uncle, and cousin will be there to pressure me into dropping the charges. Are you going to go? I sighed. Part of me wants to avoid it entirely. But another part wants to face them. To stop running from confrontation. If you go, I'm coming with you, Melanie declared. You need someone in your corner. The family dinner was exactly as I'd predicted, an orchestrated intervention designed to make me feel guilty. My parents' dining room was packed with relatives, some I hadn't seen in years. Carson. Good to see you, buddy. Uncle Steve clapped me on the shoulder, as if we were at a reunion, rather than a manipulation session. And you must be Melanie. Welcome to the family circus. My mother had prepared all my childhood favorites: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. The transparent attempt to trigger nostalgia might have worked in the past. But now it felt calculated. Amanda sat at the far end of the table, noticeably subdued. My father stood at the head, playing patriarch. Now that we're all here, he began once everyone was seated. We need to discuss this unfortunate situation as a family. You mean the car theft? I asked bluntly. Aunt Carol gasped. Carson, that's a terrible way to put it. It's the legally accurate way to put it, Melanie said quietly beside me. Taking someone's property without permission is theft. My father's face reddened. We've always shared in this family. Your mother and I have sacrificed everything for both of you kids. Both of us? I couldn't help but laugh. Dad, you redirected my college fund to Amanda. You missed my college graduation because Amanda had a fender bender. You forgot my 30th birthday because Amanda broke up with her boyfriend. That's not fair, my mother protested. We love both of you equally. Equal love, unequal treatment, I replied. And now you've escalated to theft and forgery. Amanda spoke up for the first time. I didn't know they forged your signature, Carson. I swear, something in her voice made me pause. But you knew they took my car without permission. She looked down at her plate. I needed a reliable car for the interview. Mine wouldn't make it to Seattle. Did you get the job? I asked. Amanda shook her head. The interview was canceled when I couldn't make it. The car was impounded, remember? My cousin Jake, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. I don't understand why you couldn't just borrow the car properly, with permission. Why take it? My father waved dismissively. Carson would have said no. So you admit you knew I wouldn't consent, I said. That's the definition of theft. The police are blowing this out of proportion, Aunt Carol insisted. It's a family matter. The forgery makes it more than that, Melanie pointed out. That's a serious crime. Uncle Steve leaned forward. Carson, we're just asking you to drop the charges. The DA will listen if you say it was all a misunderstanding. I felt all eyes on me, the familiar pressure to yield, to prioritize family peace over my own boundaries. But something had shifted inside me. The car represented more than transportation. It symbolized my independence, my hard work, my right to set boundaries. I can't do that, I said finally. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern that's existed my whole life. So you'll send your own parents to jail over a car? My mother asked, tears forming. They're not going to jail for a first offense, I clarified. But there need to be consequences. The dinner deteriorated after that. Uncle Steve pulled me aside to talk sense into me. Aunt Carol cornered Melanie to explain how our family works. My father stormed out to the back porch. Only my grandmother, Ruth, who had been silently observing, approached me with something other than judgment. "Come see me tomorrow," she whispered, patting my hand. "There are things you should know." As Melanie and I prepared to leave, Amanda followed us to the door. "Carson, wait. There's something else." Her hesitation set off warning bells. "What is it?" "I, kind of, had a small accident with your car the same day they gave it to me." She spoke quickly, eyes averted. "Just a little fender bender in a parking lot. Nothing major." The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. "And you didn't think to mention this to the police? Or to me?" Dad said it wasn't relevant since the car was being impounded anyway. He said he'd pay for the repairs. Melanie's hand tightened around mine. A silent reminder to stay calm. "How bad is the damage?" I asked. "Just a dent in the rear bumper. The other car barely had a scratch." I shook my head in disbelief. "Did you exchange insurance information with the other driver?" Amanda looked uncomfortable. "Dad handled it. Gave the guy cash to fix his car. Another cover-up. Another secret. You need to tell the police about this. All of it. But Dad will be furious." "That's not my problem anymore," I said, surprised at how easily the words came. "I'm done protecting this family from the consequences of their actions." As we drove away, Melanie glanced over at me. "You okay?" I watched my childhood home recede in the side mirror. "I think I will be." The next day, I visited my grandmother Ruth at her assisted living apartment. Unlike my parents' home, hers contained photos of all family members, displayed with equal prominence. She welcomed me with a warm hug and already had coffee brewing. "I've been waiting for this day," she said, settling into her favorite chair. "The day you finally stood up to them." Her words surprised me. "You're not upset about the charges?" Ruth shook her head. "Carson, what they did was wrong. Not just legally, but morally. And it's not the first time." She told me about my father's younger brother, Michael, who had cut ties with the family 20 years ago after similar treatment. How my grandfather had enabled my father's entitled behavior the same way my parents enabled Amanda. "It's a cycle," she explained. "Your grandfather favored your father over Michael. Your father learned that behavior was acceptable. Now he's doing the same with Amanda." "Did Uncle Michael ever reconnect with the family?" I asked. Ruth's eyes grew sad. "No." As I drove home, her words echoed in my mind. Was this my future too? Complete estrangement? Despite everything, the thought brought no satisfaction. My phone rang. Jackson from work. "Carson, I've received a call from your parents," he said without preamble. "They wanted to discuss your recent personal problems and how they might be affecting your work." Ice formed in my stomach. "What did they say?" "They suggested you might be having some mental health issues, making poor decisions. They mentioned possibly needing to take medical leave." Their attempt to undermine my professional reputation ignited a fury I'd never experienced before. They weren't just attacking my boundaries. They were actively trying to damage my career. "I appreciate you telling me," I managed to say. "I can assure you, my work hasn't been affected." "I know that," Jackson said firmly. "Your performance speaks for itself. I'm only calling to let you know what they're doing. We take employee privacy seriously here." "Thank you," I said, truly grateful for his support. That evening, Drew, a childhood friend, who now worked as a paralegal, called with disturbing news. "Carson, your parents came to our firm today," he said. "They're talking about countersuing you for defamation. They claim they paid for part of your car and had a verbal agreement about shared ownership." "That's completely false," I replied. "I have bank statements showing every payment came from my account." "I know. That's why I'm calling. This isn't going to hold up legally, but you should be prepared. They're escalating." The realization that my parents would fabricate claims rather than admit wrongdoing shattered any lingering hope of a simple resolution. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about truth, about integrity, about the kind of person I wanted to be. When I hung up with Drew, I sat in my apartment looking at old family photos. The smiling faces felt like strangers now. Had we ever been a real family? Or had it always been a performance? A carefully maintained illusion hiding the dysfunction beneath. Melanie found me still sitting there when she came over later. "Drew called me too," she said. "Your parents tried to get him to share details about your case, claimed it was to help you." I nodded, beyond surprise at this point. "They're not going to stop, are they?" "Probably not," she said honestly. "People who've always gotten their way don't surrender power easily." As she held me, I made a decision. This war they'd started, I wouldn't fight it their way, with manipulation and lies. I would stand firm in the truth, whatever the cost. The car, in the end, was just a vehicle. But my self-respect? That was worth fighting for. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the Clark County Courthouse. My attorney, Sarah Williams, had recommended I wear a conservative suit and prepare for a potentially emotional confrontation. "The facts are on our side," she assured me as we met outside the courtroom. "The vehicle title is in your name only. You have proof of all payments, and the forged document is damning evidence." I nodded, adjusting my tie nervously. "What about their countersuit?" Sarah's expression was professionally neutral. "Their attorney filed it yesterday. They're claiming they contributed $20,000 toward the car purchase and had a verbal agreement about shared access. That's completely fabricated." "I know. We have your bank records showing the down payment, and all subsequent payments came from your account. Their claim won't hold up, but it complicates matters." Inside the courtroom, my parents and Amanda were already seated with their attorney, Franklin Hayes, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. The contrast wasn't lost on me. They had hired one of the most prestigious lawyers in Vancouver, while I was stretching my savings to afford Sarah's reasonable rates. My parents didn't acknowledge me when I entered. Amanda glanced over briefly, then looked away. The family division was physically manifested in our seating arrangements. Them on one side, me on the other. Judge Thompson, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, called the court to order. The proceedings began with formal statements of the charges: unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and forgery. Franklin Hayes rose first. "Your Honor, this case should never have reached your courtroom. This is a family misunderstanding that has been grossly exaggerated. The vehicle in question was purchased with substantial financial assistance from my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Walter Walker, for family use." Sarah countered effectively. "Your Honor, the facts contradict Mr. Hayes's characterization. The vehicle is titled solely to my client, Carson Walker. Every payment for this vehicle came from Mr. Hayes's, Walker's personal account, which we can demonstrate with complete banking records. There was no agreement about shared ownership or access." The judge directed sharp questions at both sides, focusing particularly on the forged title transfer document. When presented with the evidence, my father claimed they had only prepared the document for when I inevitably agreed to give Amanda the car. "So you admit you created this document without Mr. Walker's knowledge or consent?" Judge Thompson asked. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We were going to discuss it with him. After taking his vehicle without permission, we had the spare key. We didn't break into it." The judge's expression hardened. "Having access to a key does not confer ownership rights, Mr. Walker." The preliminary hearing concluded with the judge finding sufficient evidence to proceed with both charges. A trial date was set for 30 days later, with my car to remain impounded until then. Outside the courtroom, my extended family had gathered in a show of support for my parents. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had been at the family dinner watched with disapproving expressions as I exited with Sarah. "How could you do this to your own family?" Aunt Carol hissed as I passed. Uncle Steve shook his head. "Your grandfather would be ashamed." Only my grandmother Ruth stood apart from the group, her eyes meeting mine with quiet approval. Beside her was a man I didn't recognize immediately, My cousin Jake, whom I hadn't seen in years. He nodded slightly, a gesture of solidarity that meant more than he could know. The weeks leading up to the trial were a blur of depositions, evidence gathering, and emotional upheaval. My parents launched a campaign of family pressure, with relatives calling daily to persuade me to drop the charges. My father's brother even offered to mediate a family meeting to resolve the issue. Meanwhile, my work performance suffered for the first time in my career. The stress of the legal proceedings combined with family pressure left me exhausted and distracted. Jackson noticed, but remained supportive, allowing me flexible scheduling for legal appointments. "Just don't let them win by ruining what you've built here," he advised. Melanie suggested I speak with a therapist to help process the emotional toll. Initially resistant, I finally agreed to meet with Dr. Marshall, a family counselor she knew professionally. "What you're experiencing is a form of trauma," Dr. Marshall explained during our first session. "Family betrayal cuts, especially deep, because it violates our fundamental trust. Sometimes I wonder if I'm overreacting," I admitted. "It's just a car, after all." "Is it really just about the car?" The question lingered with me. No, it wasn't just about the car. It was about a lifetime of being devalued, of having my boundaries ignored, of watching Amanda receive endless chances while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. My grandmother Ruth provided unexpected historical context during our weekly coffee meetings. "Your father was raised to believe he deserved special treatment," she explained. "When he didn't get it from the outside world, he created a family dynamic where he was the absolute authority. Amanda learned early that aligning with him meant privileges. You were expected to fall in line without question. Why didn't you say something before?" Ruth looked sad. "I tried, in my way. But challenging your father directly only made him more defensive. I hoped you would find your own strength, which you finally have." Amanda left a voicemail one evening that further complicated my feelings. "I didn't get the job in Seattle," she said, her voice thick with tears. "And now 3 other companies have turned me down. Mom and Dad say it's because I can't drive to interviews without a car. This is ruining my life, Carson. I hope you're happy." The guilt trip was familiar, but something in her voice sounded genuinely distraught. Despite everything, she was still my sister. I found myself wondering if there was a path forward that didn't require complete estrangement or total surrender. Jake, my long-absent cousin, reached out via email with a perspective that shook me. "What you're going through, I went through with Uncle Walter and Aunt Diane 10 years ago," he wrote. "They borrowed my work laptop to give to Amanda for a school project. When I confronted them, they claimed I had agreed to it. The laptop contained client information for my IT consulting business. I could have been sued for data breach." His story eerily paralleled mine. Down to the family pressure to forgive and forget, Jake had ultimately moved to Portland and cut contact with most of the family. "I don't regret establishing boundaries," he continued. "But I do regret not finding a middle path sooner. Total estrangement wasn't my goal, but it became the outcome because they refused to respect any limits." As the trial approached, my parents' attorney proposed a settlement. They would admit to taking the car without permission if I dropped the forgery charges, and the suit would be settled through private arbitration rather than criminal court. Sarah advised me to consider it carefully. Criminal charges create a permanent record. "Is that what you want for your parents?" The question haunted me. Did I want punishment, or did I want acknowledgement, justice, or simply respect for my boundaries going forward? Before I could decide, my parents escalated their pressure campaign. They showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening, using their emergency key to let themselves in. Finding me not home, they left childhood memorabilia scattered across my kitchen table. Report cards, sports trophies, family vacation photos. On top was a note. "Remember who you are. Remember your family." The invasion of my home was the final straw. I called a locksmith that night and changed my locks. The next morning, I informed Sarah that I was rejecting the settlement offer. We would proceed to trial. 2 days before the court date, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside were printouts of emails between my parents and Amanda from 3 weeks before they took my car. The messages clearly showed premeditation, with my father writing, "Carson won't agree to give her the car. We'll need to take matters into our own hands." Another email contained detailed instructions for taking the car from the hospital parking garage during my shift. A third discussed the forged title transfer, with my mother expressing concern about potential legal consequences and my father dismissing them. Carson would never press charges against his own family. The final page was a handwritten note. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Stay strong." It wasn't signed, but I suspected Jake. These emails transformed the case from a possible misunderstanding to clear, premeditated theft and fraud. When I showed them to Sarah, her eyes widened. "This changes everything," she said. "With this evidence, the prosecution's case is significantly stronger." The night before the trial, I sat alone in my apartment, contemplating what justice would look like. I didn't want my parents to suffer. I wanted them to understand. I didn't want to destroy my family. I wanted to rebuild it on healthier foundations. But as the anonymous note had suggested, I might not be the first victim of their behavior. But I could be the last if I had the courage to stand firm. I finally understood why this fight mattered. It wasn't about the car. It was about breaking a generational cycle of manipulation and favoritism. It was about establishing that love shouldn't come with the price tag of surrendered boundaries. It was about creating a future where relationships were based on mutual respect, not power and control. With that clarity, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The morning of the trial arrived with an unexpected development. As I prepared to leave for the courthouse, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Carson Walker?" a man's voice asked when I answered. "Yes. Who's calling?" "This is Detective Paul Reeves with the Vancouver Police Department. We need to discuss some additional evidence that's come to light in your case." My heart raced. "What kind of evidence?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Can you come to the station before your court appearance?" I called Sarah immediately, and she agreed to meet me at the police station. Detective Reeves greeted us in the lobby and led us to a small conference room. "Mr. Walker, we've received information about a prior incident involving your sister Amanda," he began, placing a folder on the table. "A DUI stop from approximately 10 months ago." I frowned, confused. "What does that have to do with my stolen car?" "The officer who conducted the stop recognized your sister's name when reviewing the current case files. During that incident, she was driving a vehicle registered to your parents, but claimed it belonged to her brother, you." Sarah leaned forward. "Are you saying they've done this before?" Detective Reeves nodded. "The officer let her go with a warning after your parents arrived and confirmed the vehicle was family-owned. However, the body cam footage shows your parents specifically claiming you had given permission for Amanda to use the car regularly." The revelation sent my mind spinning. This wasn't an isolated incident or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was part of a pattern, a calculated approach to enabling Amanda while using me as an unwitting shield. "There's more," Detective Reeves continued. "We now believe the urgency in taking your car and attempting to transfer ownership may have been related to Amanda's driving record. With the DUI warning, she was one offense away from license suspension. A vehicle registered in a different name would have complicated that process." The pieces clicked into place. My car wasn't taken because Amanda needed it more. It was taken because they needed a vehicle that couldn't be easily traced to Amanda's record if she got into trouble again. This new information transformed my understanding of the situation. What I had viewed as favoritism now looked more like a deliberate conspiracy to shield Amanda from consequences, regardless of who got hurt in the process. "Does this information change how you want to proceed?" Sarah asked as we left the station. I stared out the car window at the gray Portland morning. "Yes. No more compromise." They need to face this head-on. The courtroom was packed when we arrived. News of a family car theft case had attracted local attention, with a few reporters seated in the back. My parents and Amanda sat with their attorney, all three looking tense. What followed was one of the most difficult days of my life. The prosecution presented the evidence methodically. The vehicle registration and title in my name only, bank records showing all payments from my account, the forged transfer document, and the recently discovered emails proving premeditation. Franklin Hayes tried to portray my parents as well-meaning but misguided. They simply wanted to help their daughter, he argued. They never intended to permanently deprive Mr. Walker of his vehicle. The prosecutor countered with the emails showing explicit planning. This was not a spontaneous decision or a misunderstanding. This was calculated theft and fraud. When the DUI incident was introduced, Amanda visibly paled. My parents exchanged alarmed glances. Their attorney requested a brief recess, which the judge granted. During the break, Franklin Hayes approached Sarah with a revised settlement offer: full admission of guilt, payment of all legal costs and impound fees, plus a written apology. In exchange, they wanted me to request minimal sentencing. As tempting as it was to end the ordeal, I declined. They need to hear everything in court, I told Sarah. They need to face what they've done without a negotiated shortcut. When court resumed, I took the witness stand. Looking directly at my family while testifying was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. I described the pattern of favoritism, the dismissal of my achievements, the constant expectation that I would sacrifice for Amanda. The car represented my independence, I explained. It was the first major purchase I made entirely on my own, without family help or interference. Taking it wasn't just theft of property, it was an attempt to maintain control over my life. During cross-examination, Franklin Hayes tried to paint me as vindictive and unforgiving. Isn't it true that family sometimes borrows things without formal permission? He asked. There's a difference between borrowing a lawnmower and stealing a $25,000 car. I replied. And isn't it true that your sister really did need reliable transportation for her job interview? My sister has totaled 3 cars through negligent driving. My parents have purchased replacement vehicles each time. They could have helped her buy another car, rather than stealing mine. When Amanda took the stand, her testimony took an unexpected turn. Yes, I knew the car belonged to Carson, she admitted. And yes, I knew he hadn't given permission. But my parents convinced me. It was justified because, she paused, looking at our parents. Because they said Carson owed the family after all they'd done for him. What had they done for him? The prosecutor asked. Amanda struggled to answer. They raised him, supported him. Did they pay for his education? No. Did they contribute to the car purchase? No. Did they provide regular financial support during his adult life? No. But that's because he had a good job. I needed more help. As Amanda's testimony continued, she gradually broke down. The facade of entitlement cracked, revealing the insecurity beneath. She had been taught her entire life that she deserved special treatment, that rules applied differently to her, that her needs automatically outweighed others. When my father took the stand, his testimony was combative and unapologetic. He portrayed himself as a devoted father, making tough decisions for his family's benefit. The emails contradicted this narrative, revealing calculated planning rather than desperate measures. My mother's testimony was emotional, filled with tears and appeals to family loyalty. We never meant to hurt Carson, she insisted. We just wanted to help Amanda. By stealing his car and forging his signature? The prosecutor asked. We were going to make it right, she claimed. We were going to help him buy another car. Did you discuss this plan with Carson before taking his vehicle? No, but we knew he wouldn't understand. Her words revealed the fundamental issue at the heart of our family dysfunction. They didn't view me as an autonomous person with valid boundaries. They saw me as an extension of the family unit, expected to sacrifice without question or complaint. The trial concluded late in the afternoon. Judge Thompson announced she would deliver her verdict the following morning. That night, alone in my apartment, I experienced a storm of emotions. Grief for the family relationships that might never be repaired, anger at years of manipulation, fear about the future, but also a growing sense of peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, I had spoken my truth. I had drawn a line. I had reclaimed my voice. Dr. Marshall had suggested I write a letter expressing my feelings, not to send but to clarify my own thoughts. As I wrote, I realized what I truly wanted wasn't punishment, but understanding. I wanted my parents to see me, really see me as a person with valid needs and boundaries. I wanted Amanda to recognize how her enabling had stunted her growth. I wanted, perhaps naively, for healing to be possible someday. When Melanie called to check in, I shared these thoughts with her. "That's actually a sign of tremendous growth," she said. "Wanting reconciliation without sacrificing your self-respect shows real emotional maturity. What if they never change?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "Then you'll have to decide what kind of relationship is possible within those limitations. But Carson, you've already won the most important battle. You've broken the cycle. You've shown that patterns can be changed, that boundaries can be established, that truth matters." Her words stayed with me as I prepared for the verdict. Whatever happened in court tomorrow, I had already reclaimed something precious. My autonomy, my self-respect, my right to be treated with dignity. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt not just anger or hurt, but hope, fragile, but real, that something better might emerge from these painful lessons. The courtroom was even more crowded for the verdict. Word had spread about the family drama playing out in Judge Thompson's court, attracting curiosity seekers and even a reporter from the local newspaper. I sat beside Sarah, trying to project calm, despite my churning stomach. My parents and Amanda entered with Franklin Hayes, their expressions grim. My extended family filled 2 rows behind them, a visual representation of the lines that had been drawn. Only grandmother Ruth, Jake, and my cousin Emily sat on my side of the aisle, joined by Melanie, Jackson from the hospital, and Drew. Judge Thompson entered and called the court to order. Rather than proceeding directly to the verdict, she surprised everyone with an announcement. "Before I render my decision in this case, there is new evidence I must address. The prosecution has received a witness statement that is directly relevant to these proceedings." Franklin Hayes rose immediately. "Your Honor, the defense objects to the introduction of new evidence after testimony has concluded. The witness came forward last night, Mr. Hayes. Given the nature of the testimony, I believe it is in the interest of justice to hear it." She nodded to the bailiff, who opened a side door. Thomas Wilkins, the manager from Toyota of Portland, where I had purchased my Camry, entered and was sworn in. "Mr. Wilkins, please explain your involvement in this case," the prosecutor requested. Thomas cleared his throat. "Last year, Carson Walker purchased a 2023 Toyota Camry from my dealership. He made a down payment of $5,000 and financed the remainder. About 3 months ago, Carson's father, Walter Walker, came to the dealership asking about the vehicle. My heart pounded. This was completely new information to me. What was the nature of Mr. Walker's inquiry? The prosecutor asked. He wanted to know if his son had made all the payments on time, and whether the loan had been satisfied. He claimed to be helping with some of the payments, and wanted to verify the account status. Did you provide this information to Mr. Walker? No. I explained that due to privacy regulations, I could not share account details with anyone but the vehicle owner. Mr. Walker became quite upset, saying he had a right to know because he was the father. What happened next? He asked if it would be possible to add his name to the title once the loan was paid off. I explained that would require Carson's signature and presence. He seemed very interested in the exact process for transferring vehicle ownership. The revelation silenced the courtroom. This wasn't a spontaneous decision to help Amanda. My father had been planning to take my car for months, gathering information about how to seize control of it. When Thomas finished testifying, Judge Thompson called an unexpected witness, Officer Tyler Grant, who had accompanied me to my parents' house the day the car was taken. Officer Grant, you had additional contact with the defendants after the initial report, correct? Yes, Your Honor. Following the impounding of the vehicle, I received multiple calls from Walter and Diane Walker. They initially claimed the vehicle had been purchased with family funds. When I requested documentation, they changed their story, saying there was a verbal agreement about shared usage. Did they mention anything about their daughter's driving record during these conversations? Officer Grant hesitated. Yes. They expressed concern that if their daughter received another traffic citation while driving a vehicle registered to her, she might face license suspension. The final surprise witness was one I never expected. Thomas, the owner of a small body shop in Vancouver. Mr. Thomas, please explain your interaction with the Walker family, the prosecutor requested. About 3 weeks ago, a young woman brought in a silver Toyota Camry with rear bumper damage. Said she'd backed into a pole. I gave her an estimate for $800 to repair it. Her father called later that day, asking if we could fix it quickly and without reporting to insurance. Did you perform this repair? No. Before we could schedule it, the car was impounded. The father called again, very upset, saying to cancel the work order and not to mention the damage to anyone. With each testimony, the calculated nature of my parents' actions became clearer. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an impulsive decision. It was a deliberate plan to take my car, transfer ownership, and conceal evidence of Amanda's continued irresponsible driving. When Judge Thompson finally delivered her verdict, her words were measured but firm. In the case of State v. Walter and Diane Walker, on the charge of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, I find the defendants guilty. On the charge of forgery, I also find the defendants guilty. She turned her attention to Amanda. While Miss Amanda Walker has not been charged in this case, evidence suggests she was a willing participant in the unlawful taking of her brother's vehicle, with knowledge that he had not granted permission. The sentencing came next. Given the defendant's lack of prior criminal history, Judge Thompson imposed 12 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, restitution for all legal and impound fees, and mandatory counseling. This case illustrates how family dynamics can cross from unhealthy to unlawful, she concluded. While the court cannot heal family relationships, it can establish that legal boundaries apply equally to all, regardless of familial ties. As the courtroom began to clear, the most unexpected moment of the day occurred. Amanda approached me, her eyes red from crying. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice barely audible. "Last year, I got pulled over for DUI. The officer was going to arrest me, but Dad convinced him I was driving your car without permission. He said you would be furious if you found out, and begged him to let me go with a warning." The admission stunned me into silence. "They've been covering for me for years," she continued. "The accidents, the tickets, everything. Dad always fixed it, paid it off, made it go away. I never had to face consequences. Why are you telling me this now?" Her eyes finally met mine. "Because for the first time, I'm seeing what it's done to all of us. To you. To them. To me. I don't know how to be a responsible adult. Because I've never had to be one." It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Through her tears, I glimpsed the person my sister might have become, without the distorting influence of our parents' favoritism. Someone capable of self-reflection, of empathy, of growth. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "That depends on a lot of things. On whether Mom and Dad can acknowledge what they've done. On whether you're willing to make changes. On whether I can trust any of you again. She nodded, accepting the uncertainty. I'd like to try. To be better. To fix what I've broken. Not just with you, but with myself. As she walked away to join our parents, I felt the first tentative stirring of hope. Not for immediate reconciliation. Too much damage had been done for that. But for the possibility of something healthier, eventually taking root. Sarah touched my arm. Your car will be released from impound tomorrow. The damage will be covered by the restitution order. The car, the original focus of this entire ordeal, seemed almost secondary now. What had been recovered was far more valuable. My voice, my boundaries, the truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters approached asking for statements. I declined, wanting to process everything privately first. My small group of supporters gathered around me, creating a protective buffer. Proud of you, man, Jackson said simply. Drew nodded. You stood your ground. Not many people would have had that courage. Grandmother Ruth embraced me, whispering, You broke the cycle, Carson. That's the greatest victory of all. As we prepared to leave, I noticed my parents standing alone by their car, looking suddenly older and uncertain. For a moment, our eyes met across the parking lot. No words were exchanged, but something passed between us, an acknowledgement, perhaps, that nothing would ever be the same. Whether that change would ultimately lead to healing or permanent estrangement remained to be seen. But for the first time, the choice felt like mine to make. 1 month after the trial, I stood in the driveway of my new apartment building, keys in hand, staring at my silver Toyota Camry. The rear bumper had been repaired, the interior detailed, all traces of its brief theft erased. Yet it felt different somehow, weighted with meaning beyond mere transportation. Planning to stare at it all day? Or are we going to load these boxes? Melanie teased, balancing a container of kitchen supplies on her hip. I smiled, unlocking the trunk, just appreciating the moment. Moving to a new apartment had been a practical decision. My lease was ending anyway, but it also represented a fresh start. The old place held too many complicated memories. The spare key my parents had used, the family dinner ambush, the childhood memorabilia left as emotional manipulation. This new space, closer to the hospital, and in a secure building with underground parking, symbolized the boundaries I was establishing in all areas of my life. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Jake. Still on for coffee tomorrow? Brought those family photos you asked about? Since the trial, Jake had become an unexpected ally and friend. Having navigated his own journey of family estrangement and selective reconnection, he offered perspective without pressure, understanding without judgment. Through him, I was learning about family history that helped explain, though not excuse, my parents' behavior. All set for tomorrow. I texted back. Thanks again. As we carried boxes to my third-floor apartment, Jackson called. Just checking if you're still taking that PTO next week? Definitely. I confirmed. First real vacation in 3 years. Well deserved, he said. The lab will survive without you for 5 days. The professional support I'd received throughout the ordeal had been both surprising and heartening. Rather than damaging my career as I'd feared, standing up for myself had earned respect from colleagues who recognized the courage it required. Melanie and I spent the afternoon unpacking, transforming the empty space into a home that reflected both our tastes. We decided to move in together, another milestone that might have been delayed indefinitely if I'd remained enmeshed in unhealthy family dynamics. Have you thought more about your parents' invitation? She asked, as we arranged books on shelves. The question touched on the complicated reality I was still navigating. 2 weeks after the trial, my parents had sent a formal letter, not an email or text, but an actual letter on stationery, requesting a meeting with a family counselor present. I'm still processing it, I admitted. Part of me wants to hear what they have to say. Another part worries it's just another manipulation tactic. Melanie nodded, understanding my hesitation. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. The truth was, I wasn't ready for direct contact yet. The wounds were still too fresh. The trust, too thoroughly broken. But I hadn't closed the door entirely. Dr. Marshall had helped me see that reconciliation, if it happened, wouldn't be a single dramatic moment, but a gradual process requiring consistent effort from all parties. My sister Amanda had taken more concrete steps toward change. She'd enrolled in a financial responsibility course, found a job at a local coffee shop, and was attending weekly therapy sessions. We'd exchanged a few cautious text messages, nothing deep, just small acknowledgments of each other's existence. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a tentative opening. Later that evening, my grandmother Ruth called with her weekly check-in. At 83, she'd embraced technology with surprising enthusiasm, even joining a social media group for grandparents, supporting adult grandchildren through family conflict. "How's the new place?" she asked. "Still surrounded by boxes, but it already feels more like home than the old apartment ever did." "That's because you chose it on your own terms," she observed with her characteristic insight. "No compromises, no obligations, just what you wanted." We chatted about her book club, my upcoming vacation with Melanie, the early spring weather. Normal, everyday topics that grounded me in the present, rather than pulling me back into the past. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. "You know, Carson, family isn't just what you're born into, it's also what you build. Sometimes the strongest branches grow from the most difficult pruning." The next morning, I met Jake at a coffee shop near my new apartment. He brought a shoebox of old photos and documents that filled gaps in my understanding of our family history. "Your grandfather did the same thing to your dad that your dad did to you," he explained, showing me letters documenting financial favoritism, broken promises, and manipulative tactics. "Your father was the Amanda of his generation, constantly bailed out, never held accountable. Your Uncle Michael was the scapegoat, just like you. So my dad is just repeating patterns," I mused, studying a particularly telling photo of my grandfather publicly praising my father while my uncle stood forgotten in the background. "Exactly. Doesn't excuse it, but explains it. Breaking generational patterns is brutally hard work. Most people just default to what they know, even when it's harmful." "Have you ever spoken to Uncle Michael?" I asked. Like my grandmother Ruth, Jake maintained limited contact with him in Colorado. "A few times. He's built a good life out there. Has his own family, successful business. He says leaving was the hardest and best decision he ever made." I considered the parallel paths our lives had taken. "Does he have any relationship with the family now?" "Holiday cards, occasional phone calls with your grandmother. That's about it. He says he forgave them years ago. But forgiveness didn't mean returning to the same dynamic." That distinction resonated deeply. Forgiveness wasn't the same as reconciliation. One could happen without the other. Both required work, but different kinds of work, with different standards of success. The following Monday, I received an unexpected email from Thomas, the Toyota dealership manager who had testified at the trial. "Carson, I hope this isn't overstepping, but your father came to see me yesterday. He didn't ask about the car or the case. He simply wanted to apologize for putting me in an uncomfortable position last year. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Thought you might want to know. All the best, Thomas." It was a small thing, perhaps, but significant. My father was acknowledging his actions to people outside the family, taking responsibility without apparent expectation of reward. Whether this represented genuine growth or strategic image management remained to be seen. But it was a data point worth noting. That afternoon, I visited Dr. Marshall for our regular session. She'd been instrumental in helping me navigate the emotional aftermath of the trial, offering tools to manage the complex grief of family estrangement without surrendering my hard-won boundaries. "How are you feeling about the family counseling invitation?" she asked after we'd discussed the move and other updates. I'm thinking of proposing individual sessions first, I replied. Meeting them together feels too overwhelming right now. That's a reasonable boundary. Rebuilding trust happens in stages. Not all at once. What if it never happens? I asked, voicing the question that still haunted me. What if we can never repair what's broken? Then you continue building a life that honors your values and needs, she said simply. Connection is important, but not at the cost of your self-respect or mental health. Sometimes the most compassionate choice for everyone is maintaining distance. Her words offered permission to prioritize my well-being regardless of the outcome with my family. The goal wasn't some picture-perfect reconciliation scene from a movie. It was creating a life of authenticity, respect, and meaningful connection, whatever form that ultimately took. The day before Melanie and I left for our vacation, I received a handwritten letter from Amanda. Unlike our parents' formal stationery, hers was notebook paper with coffee stains on one corner. Authentic, imperfect, real, Carson, she wrote. I've been trying to find the right words for weeks. Sorry. Feels inadequate for everything that happened. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or to make excuses. I just want you to know I'm working on myself. For the first time, I'm facing consequences instead of running from them. It's terrifying, but also freeing. I understand if you need space from all of us right now. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. If there's ever a time you're open to talking, I'd like to listen really. Listen to how my actions have affected you. Take care, Amanda. I read the letter twice, struck by its lack of emotional manipulation or veiled guilt trips. It offered neither excuses nor demands. It simply acknowledged reality and expressed willingness to respect my choices. Later that night, as Melanie slept beside me, I sat on our new balcony looking at the Portland skyline. The journey of the past few months had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. I had lost some things: the comfortable illusion of family unity, the path of least resistance, the pattern of silent sacrifice. But I had gained far more: self-respect, clearer boundaries, authentic relationships, the courage to stand in my truth. My car sat in the secure garage below, no longer just a symbol of independence, but a reminder that some battles are worth fighting, not for vengeance, but for the principle of mutual respect. I had fought not to punish my family, but to establish that love without respect isn't really love at all. It's control wearing love's disguise. The future remained uncertain. Perhaps my parents would do the difficult work of examining their patterns and making genuine changes. Perhaps Amanda would continue her journey toward responsibility and self-awareness. Perhaps we would eventually build new relationships based on healthier dynamics. Or perhaps not. And I was finally at peace with that uncertainty. What I knew with certainty was this: I would no longer shrink myself to fit others' expectations. I would no longer accept being valued less than I deserved. I would no longer participate in dynamics that damaged all involved, enabling harmful patterns to continue unchallenged. The most powerful lesson from this painful chapter wasn't about cars or courts or even family specifically. It was about the fundamental right we all have to be treated with dignity, to have our boundaries respected, to expect honesty from those who claim to love us. In standing firm on these principles, I hadn't just reclaimed my car. I had reclaimed myself. As the night grew cooler, I thought about the road ahead, not just the literal vacation Melanie and I would begin tomorrow, but the journey of building a life true to my values. It wouldn't always be easy. There would be moments of doubt, of grief, of wondering what if. But for perhaps the first time, I was driving my own life, hands firmly on the wheel, eyes on the horizon, moving forward with clarity and purpose. And that made all the difference. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to establish boundaries with family members? How did you balance self-respect with the desire to maintain relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, Please like and subscribe for more content about navigating complex family dynamics and personal growth. And if you know someone who might benefit from this message, please share it with them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage and clarity on your own path.